You were born with potential. You know that. Deep down, somewhere underneath all the excuses and the comfort and the scrolling, you feel it. But here's the brutal truth. Most people die with that potential still locked inside them. They never crack it open. They never even try. Genghis Khan did not die with unused potential. He squeezed every last drop out of himself and out of the world around him. And I'm not talking about conquering land. I'm talking about something far more dangerous, the complete and total transformation of a human being from nothing into everything. This video is not a history lesson. This is a blueprint, because everything Genghis Khan did to build the largest contiguous empire in human history, you can apply to your life right now. Not as a metaphor, not as inspiration porn, as an actual operational system for becoming powerful. So if that's what you're here for, subscribe right now. Hit that button, because the content on this channel will not coddle you. It will change you. Now let's begin. Temujin, that was his name before the world knew him as Genghis Khan, was born around 1162 on the Mongolian steppe. And the steppe doesn't care about you. It's freezing cold, brutally unforgiving, and survival is not guaranteed. His father was a minor chieftain, not powerful, not wealthy. Just a man with a name that meant almost nothing in the grand scheme of the tribal politics that ruled that land. When Temujin was 9 years old, his father was poisoned by a rival tribe, and in an instant, everything was gone. The tribe abandoned his family. His mother, Holon, was left alone with her children, stripped of all resources, all protection, all status. They were cast out into the wilderness with nothing but their hands and whatever they could forage from the earth. Now stop for a second. Think about what most people do when they lose everything. They collapse. They become bitter. They spend the rest of their lives telling the story of what was taken from them. That becomes their identity, the victim, and it's comfortable there. It's easy to stay there. Nobody challenges you when you're a victim. Temujin did not do that. He looked at the wreckage of his life and made a decision that almost nobody makes. He decided that his circumstances were not his identity. That's the first lesson, and it might be the most important one in this entire video. Your past is not your prison unless you build a cell yourself. Temujin had every reason to be broken. He chose instead to be forged. His early years were savage. His family survived on roots, berries, and whatever small animals they could catch. He was captured by a rival clan as a teenager and worn as a slave. He escaped, he was betrayed, he was hunted, and each time the world tried to bury him, he used the ground he stood on as a foundation to climb higher. Not because he was superhuman, because he was obsessively committed to one thing, becoming unkillable, not just physically, mentally, spiritually, strategically. Here's what most people miss about Genghis Khan. They think his power came from violence. It didn't. Violence was just a tool. His real power came from an almost supernatural ability to learn. He absorbed every experience, every betrayal, every loss, every near-death, and converted it into intelligence. He studied enemies he defeated. He adopted technologies from civilizations he conquered. He had no ego about being wrong, none. He would throw away everything he thought he knew the moment he found something better. Think about how rare that is. Most people can't even admit they're wrong in a Twitter argument. Genghis Khan would absorb the military tactics of people who nearly killed him and use those exact tactics to destroy the next enemy. He turned his defeats into weapons. That is a level of egoless learning that almost nobody in history has matched. And here's how you apply this. Stop protecting your current identity so hard. You are not your opinions. You are not your methods. You are not the version of yourself you built 5 years ago. The moment you become attached to who you are right now, you stop becoming who you could be. Every time you get knocked down in business, in relationships, in health, ask only one question. What can I extract from this that makes me harder to defeat next time? That is the Mongol mindset. That is the actual mechanism behind Genghis Khan's rise. Now let's talk about people. Because Genghis Khan understood human nature at a level that would make most modern psychologists embarrassed. In the fractured tribal world of 12th century Mongolia, loyalty was transactional. You were loyal to your tribe, your bloodline, your clan. That was it. It was rigid, it was limiting. And Temujin shattered it completely. He introduced something radical for his time. Merit? He promoted people based on ability, not birth. A former slave who was brilliant could rise higher in his organization than a nobleman who was mediocre. This wasn't charity. It wasn't virtue signaling. It was pure strategic intelligence. He wanted the best people doing the most important jobs, period. And because of that, people from every background, conquered, enemies included, would fight and die for him with absolute ferocity. Because they knew that in his world, what you could do mattered more than where you came from. The modern application of this is painfully obvious, yet almost nobody does it. If you're building a team, a business, a movement, stop hiring and promoting based on comfort. Stop surrounding yourself with people who look like you, think like you, went to the same schools as you. That's a weakness disguised as familiarity. Genghis Khan's inner circle included former enemies, people from different religions, different races, different languages. He didn't care. He cared about competence and loyalty. The moment you start doing the same, your ceiling disappears. He also understood something about loyalty that most leaders never grasp. Loyalty is not demanded. It is earned through demonstrated commitment to the people under you. When Genghis Khan promised his soldiers a share of the plunder, he delivered. Every time. When he made a promise to a surrendered enemy who cooperated, he kept it. And when someone betrayed him, regardless of how powerful they were, the consequence was total and irreversible. This combination of absolute reliability and absolute accountability created a culture where people genuinely wanted to perform at their highest level, not out of fear alone, out of respect. Ask yourself honestly, do the people around you trust that you will do what you say? Because if they don't, you will never access their full potential. And without their full potential, you will always be limited by your own. Let's talk about the concept Mongols called the will to adapt. The greatest military empires before Genghis Khan were great because they had a dominant way of fighting. The Romans had their legions, the Chinese had their fortified walls and disciplined infantry, and those methods worked until they met someone who refused to fight the same way they did. The Mongols had no fixed style, none. They fought on horseback, using hit-and-run tactics that were nearly impossible to counter. But when they needed to take a fortified city, something nomadic horsemen had no tradition of doing, they didn't say, "This is not what we do." They hired Chinese siege engineers. They studied Persian fortification techniques. They built catapults. They diverted rivers to flood city walls. They adapted with a speed and completeness that was psychologically terrifying to their enemies because enemies couldn't predict them. You can't build a defense against an enemy that becomes whatever they need to be to defeat you. This is perhaps the single most applicable Mongol principle for the modern world. The greatest threat to your success is not competition, it is rigidity. The people who are losing right now are losing because they mastered one skill, one platform, one method, and then refused to evolve when the world changed around them. The Mongols would laugh at you for this. Adaptation is not a sign of weakness. It is the supreme competitive advantage. The only people who get to keep winning long-term are the ones who are genuinely comfortable with transformation. Now I want to talk about something that almost no one discusses when they talk about Genghis Khan. His relationship with failure and fear. He was afraid, of course he was. He experienced trauma that would shatter most adults before he was even a teenager. He had fear of betrayal. It was founded because he was betrayed repeatedly. He had fear of poverty. He had lived it. He had fear of death. He had come close to it more times than we can count. But he did something with fear that separated him from every other person on that step. He used it as data, not as instruction. He didn't let fear tell him what to do. He let fear tell him what to prepare for. There's a difference between those two things that is enormous. When he felt afraid of a powerful enemy, that fear triggered not paralysis but preparation. Intense, obsessive, exhaustive preparation. He would study an enemy for months before attacking. He used spies, extensive intelligence networks, to understand their weaknesses, their internal politics, their supply lines. By the time he struck, he had already won in his mind dozens of times. Most people use fear as a stop sign. Genghis Khan used it as a GPS. Fear points directly at what needs to be solved. It is the most honest signal your brain can give you. In the moment you train yourself to run toward what frightens you with preparation, not recklessness, you become a different category of person entirely. There is one more principle I have to give you, and this one is the hardest to hear. Genghis Khan was ruthless about cutting dead weight. Not cruel for sport, not violent for ego, but absolutely ruthless about removing anything, any alliance, any person, any belief system, any habit that was pulling him backward. He executed leaders who betrayed him even when those leaders had been loyal allies for years. He dissolved tribal structures that had existed for centuries because they created division in his unified army. He destroyed his own comfort repeatedly in service of his larger mission. The reason most people never live up to their potential is not lack of talent or lack of opportunity. It's that they are carrying dead weight and refusing to drop it. The relationship that drains you, the business partner who doesn't match your level, the city you've outgrown, the version of yourself you perform for people who haven't grown with you. All of it is weight, and weight has a cost. Every pound of dead weight you carry is potential you cannot access. Genghis Khan was ruthless about this, not because he didn't feel the pain of letting go, but because he understood that his mission was bigger than his comfort. Your potential is not a fixed thing. It is not a ceiling you were born with. It is a direct function of the decisions you make about how you respond to loss, who you surround yourself with, how quickly you adapt, what you are willing to cut, and how honestly you face your own fear. Genghis Khan started as a starving, abandoned child on a frozen steppe. He died as the ruler of an empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, the largest land empire ever, assembled by a single human being. He did not achieve this because the world was kind to him. He achieved it because he extracted maximum value from every single experience he survived, and applied it with absolute focus toward a singular vision. The question is not whether you have what it takes. The question is whether you are willing to use what you have. The steppe is unforgiving. So is the world you live in. The only difference between someone who gets consumed by it and someone who conquers it is the decision to be forged rather than broken. That decision is yours, right now, today. If this video added real value to your life, do one thing, like it and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, because this channel is committed to giving you content that actually changes how you think and operate in the world. Every video, no fluff, no filler, just the raw truth about power, history, and human potential. Hit subscribe and come build something real.